And President Biden reiterating his intentions to stay in the race, but if he were to step aside, how exactly would that process look? For more on that, we are bringing in Dr. Lauren Wright, NewsNation political contributor and political scientist at Princeton University. Dr. Wright, I want to jump right in this with you with the time that we have.
Sure.
Very quickly, let's talk about this debate, because we have heard from political scientists so many times, debates just don't have that much of an impact on elections.
That's right.
Was this debate different?
I do think it was, and I'm a proponent of what we call minimal effects in political science, which is just this idea that these individual campaign events don't tend to change election outcomes. And the reason for that with debates is partisans tune in and they're cheering on their own team, and it doesn't really tend to change a lot of people's minds. But this was outrageous, and Biden's behavior was deeply disturbing to anybody watching. And so that's why you see the New York Times piece. That's why you see the panic from Democrats, who have been very supportive of him all along. And so, yes, I do think it is a game changer, and it's landscape shifting, Natasha.
Yeah, and you are not one who is prone to hyperbolic language, so it really means
Thank
a lot
you.
that you're saying that.
I don't think I am either.
No, really.
Thank you.
And I know you have said it is hard to imagine a worse situation for Democrats. Lay it out for us exactly, though. How difficult would it be to replace President Biden on the ticket?
Well, it's not impossible, because we're still in the stage pre-convention where really everything is up to the party, and they control that process and could meet before and change the rules if they even wanted to. But as long as it's in the hands of the party, anything's possible. That doesn't mean it's easy. It would be very difficult, very thorny, and it must, number one, involve President Biden stepping down. And so that's a condition for replacing him on the ticket at this point. And how that would happen is he would have to marshal support in a very public way behind one person. I think it has to be Kamala Harris. It would be a huge insult to her if, after this big speech and everything surrounding her announcement, if you remember how historic it was, Biden saying, "I'm a bridge to the future, and this is the future of the party," that would be a huge scandal. That set aside, there's a lot of ambitious players in the Democratic Party, and it could be a contested convention where no one gets a majority of delegates on the first ballot. It could be a mess. But anything is still possible at the early stage we're at right now.
Yeah, very quickly, I know that Ari just brought up this interesting point that I hadn't heard raised very often, which is that money is an issue here. It can't just go to Governor Gavin Newsom. That the way that FEC rules work, it would have to go to Kamala most easily. Is that correct?
I think the most easily, yes. And, delegates are pledged delegates at the DNC. And so the language specifically is that they must, in all good conscience, support the will of the people who elected them, the voters, essentially. And so that's just one other reason why it would be such a disaster if it was a contested convention, if it was something like we saw in 1960, 1968, where there's multiple people jockeying for the spot. Kamala Harris is the most obvious choice. And I think it would be such a spectacle if it was not her.
Okay, and again, President Biden giving no indication that he plans to step aside. He is vowing to stay in this race, but it is hard to imagine, Dr. Lauren Wright, that we would be having this conversation. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.